Okay, Morena, good morning. I have the pleasure this morning of just saying a few words before handing over to AJ. I hope you're all doing well out there. We've got 2.5 days to go, then you can all have a holiday. Well done, you've done great. That's 6 weeks of this we've had now, and I know it'll have been a long 6 weeks for you, but we're nearly there. We broke the back of it, and I think there's lots of positive signs after yesterday. So fingers crossed, we're all going to be back at the start of next term. Okay, you don't want to hear from me this morning, but I just wanted to wish you all the best. We've got a terrific guest this morning who is a proud Westlaker. He did really well at school, and he's gone on to just do bigger and better things ever since, all over the world. And Mr. McBride's going to interview him. He came back 9 years ago now for our 50th Jubilee and spoke at the big gala dinner, and he brought the house down. He was absolutely brilliant. And Mr. McBride's going to talk to him today about life at Westlake and life afterwards. So I will stop there and I'll hand over to AJ Hackett and Mr. McBride. Enjoy it, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Good morning, boys out there. Like Mr. Ferguson's just said, it's an absolute pleasure to have someone of AJ's caliber. And he is proud to call himself a Westlaker. So we're going to dive straight into it, AJ. We put this together at pretty short notice, and I know you changed a few of your commitments to make time for us. So we're really thankful for that. And I think we'll start where we've started with a few people, really. Just your recollections of being at Westlake. Obviously, you were there at a time when none of our boys were even born. Some of their parents might not have been born either, but we'll gloss over that one. But what do you think how did you find it? What was it like for you, coming to a pretty big school and starting your Westlake journey?
Well, I was brought up on the north shore of Auckland, and Westlake was a short walk away. We were brought up in a little street called Selwyn Crescent, just off the side of Crown Hill. And it was an all-boys school then, it still is now. And I only completed 3 years in those days. I did 3rd, 4th and 5th form. And I'd had enough of school by the time I got into the 5th form at the age of 15. And my mother said, well, if you want to leave, you've got to have a job, that's all. So we lined up a building apprenticeship, and she said, but, do the best you can. So I sort of buckled down and completed my 5th form year and passed school certificate just. And I really loved the sport side of the school. And I have, I've got lifelong mates from those days, and I have really fond memories. We were probably like a lot of the guys that are listening. We were quite naughty in those days, but the teachers were pretty patient with us, and it was a really cool experience. And I'm really privileged and honoured to have spent 3 years of my life at Westlake. And my son actually picked up from me about 8 or 9 years ago. He went back and did the 6th and 7th form year there, and also really enjoyed it. He's also created some friends out of New Zealand that are lifelong mates as well, and it's just really good. But briefly, that's my Westlake experience.
Brilliant. It was, and I suppose it says a lot about what you think about the school. Living in, I believe Jade, your son, was in France at the time. He came back to New Zealand to do 12 and 13. So it's a bit of an endorsement for us as a school as well. So thank you. He was great when he was here, Jade, as well. I think he really enjoyed it. So it was a pleasure to have him. I taught him, and he was top man. Just something you touched on there, AJ. You mentioned, you loved your sport. You went on to make a sort of a living, of exceptionally successful career out of physical activity. Was thrill seeking and being in a bit of a adrenaline junkie, was that something that was always within you, or how did you sort of those formative years come about?
Well, I in those days, we used to walk everywhere. We had bikes, so we could ride. I spent a lot of time at the beach, Milford, Castor Bay, and around the cliffs there. Did a lot of snorkeling and sort of hanging out. And something I got into was jumping off cliffs, and just down the road from Westlake Boys, there's a quarry next to Lake Pudpuki. old Smales Quarry, and we had a few spots there that would sneak out of school and go down and jump off these cliffs into the water and, challenge ourselves, just trying to find higher and higher spots. And I think, obviously with the rugby and running and all that sort of thing, they're all about challenging yourselves and trying to do the best you kind of can in that area, and just sort of personal achievement stuff, really. And so no, it's been in the family as well. Like, and going back into my uncle went to the Antarctic, did the Trans-Antarctic expedition with Sir Edmund Hillary back in 1957, I think it was. Wow. And they were mountain people, and like many Kiwis, had to adapt to the land and be kind of innovative. And this guy turned out to be a brilliant engineer and did all sorts of wonderful things. And so I suppose I kind of followed in the family's footsteps a little bit,
Yep. Yeah. And I suppose, I mean, you've alluded to, you're building an apprenticeship. I think I read somewhere you were selling encyclopedias for a time as well in Australia, and things sort of turned around, I suppose, when you got into this whole bungee thing. How did it even come about? What prompted someone to think, wow, I know what to do. It's jump off a bridge and go from there. What's the story behind it? How did it all happen?
Hey, well, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like I just going back slightly, I did a carpentry and joinery apprenticeship as soon as I left Westlake, and I really enjoyed that. I've always been a bit of a builder, and so straight away I actually set up my own little construction company. And so what I ended up doing is I'd work for long enough to just make enough money. I'd do maybe 4 or 5 months, 6 months max, and then I'd go overseas and ski, spend it all, then come back and start again, and then I thought, well, actually I could do really well doing this. And one of the things that also happened in the meantime was I ended up selling encyclopedias, and I actually got quite good at that as well, and thought, well, I could do very well doing this. But I decided, hey, look, both of those things are not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then a friend of mine approached me and asked me if I'd like to help him figure out how to do bungee jumping. And I'd sort of seen something about that. And anyway, I had a bit of a chat. And I also used to do quite a bit of rock climbing. And with the bungee jump, when you jump off something, the trick's to get back to where you jumped from, or to get down to the ground safely. So, there's two parts. There's one is having the fun, but then the serious part is actually surviving. So it's a bit like climbing a mountain, like one part's getting to the top, but you've still got to get back down. And that's often where most people have issues. And so with my building experience and climbing, mountaineering kind of experience, I was actually able to put together a bit of a system that I thought would work in terms of, okay, how do you actually do this thing? And then we basically got onto some people in Auckland. In those days, it was called the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, or the DSIR. We gave them some rubber, they tested it and came up with some equations, and I converted those equations into how to make a bungee cord, which is the stretchy thing we bounce around on, and then embarked on a testing program. And straight away on the first day that I did a jump, which was just off the Greenhithe Bridge that you're probably all familiar with. It's only 19 metres at the high spot over a fairly deep canal where the yachts and the boats go under. And we got a huge rush, big buzz out of that, and decided, well, let's go a bit further. So we then embarked on a bit of a mission around the North Island, finding higher bridges to jump from. And so within a matter of months, we jumped, off bridges in the Waikato, the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and right in the middle of the North Island near Owakuni. And they were the highest bridges in the country. And by the end of it, I realised, actually, this is predictable, which is what we wanted to find out. If you manage it properly, it was predictable. So we just needed to know the weight of the person, the height of the thing we were jumping from, and the size of the bungee cord, and then it was really predictable. So from there, I kind of went overseas to France, and I was skiing for a winter, and I developed it further where we found some much bigger bridges, jumped off those, then jumped out of a cable car in the snow at like minus 20 degrees to see what would sort of happen with that. And then finally jumped off the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And that's when it really got global sort of media attention. Yep. And a lot of people then decided, hey, AJ, we'd like to actually have a go at it. And so I was inviting people to have jumps and have a bit of fun. And then a friend of mine said, AJ, why don't we commercialize this? So basically I looked at it and said, okay, maybe that's a good idea, and came up with a bit of a formula. And then I just decided to commit my life to it. And that's advice for anybody really. Like, you've got to follow your dreams, and when you decide on something, just give it 110% and just go for it every day, and ignore all the knockers. And there's many people out there that will criticize you guys for decisions that you make, and you make decisions for reasons, some good, some bad, but you just got to learn from it. And something I learned in the very early days, and probably the most important lesson I've learned ever, and I live by this every day, is that you have to accept responsibility for your own actions. And so what I do is, when I get pissed off or annoyed or upset about something that hasn't gone quite to plan, instead of pointing the finger at somebody and blaming them, I've got one finger pointing at them and three pointing back at myself. So it's 3-1, my fault. Even if I am in the right, I will accept responsibility for the screw up. And the beautiful thing about that is you immediately move on. So you don't harbor negative things like hate or jealousy or mistrust or anything like that. You just move forward, accepting responsibility. And that's what I did with bungee. So, like over 4 million jumpers later, in just over 30 years, 33 years, and we've expanded many different activities. I work in all sorts of beautiful and amazing places around the world. And, and that's largely based on the fact that, hey, we had a vision, which was to try to open people up and get them to challenge themselves, managing their own risks, and just pushing people beyond their normal boundaries. And that's kind of what we've been doing, and we'll do it, for generations to come. And we'll always take responsibility for our actions. So we don't try to hide behind our mistakes. We just lay them on the table. And, back in the day when I was at Westlake, when we were naughty, we used to get the cane, and that was kind of, well, it was kind of funny, but it also bloody hurt.
I can imagine. Yeah,
it hurts.
It's probably a good thing it's not around, definitely, for the boys anyway. AJ, I know we've sort of danced through we've gone from Greenhithe Bridge, and we've gone right through in a short space of time there, talking about what's now a multi-million-dollar global industry. I just want to go back a little bit. You stood on Greenhithe Bridge for the first time. Yes, you've done your science, all the maths is correct, you've probably triple checked it and everything, but how are you feeling? You're a sort of crash test dummy for something that's never ever been really done before. What are some of the emotions, and how can that translate for boys who are maybe taking their first steps into risk, or into, literally a leap of faith or something into the unknown? What was going on your head then in the lead up to it as well?
Well, Andrew, it's for me, it's pretty simple. What we always do is we call it managing the risk. So the first thing you've got to look at is you've got to identify the risk. So excuse my language, but we use these 4 initials, and the word everyone uses it occasionally. It's called shit, and S stands for stop, H stands for have a look, I stands for initiate a plan, and T stands for take action. So if you remember that little word, we do it every day, so it's kind of easy to remember.
Yep.
That's how you manage risk, and so you've got to actually stop and see what the hell's going on first. And so whatever your dream is, whatever you're thinking about doing, there, of course, there's going to be some risk, and there has to be problems, because the beautiful thing about problems is they create wonderful solutions. And so through actually giving things a go and working through a pathway to what you're wanting to do, it's never going to be a perfect road. And that's the most exciting thing of it. And so for me, standing on the edge of a bridge, I stand up there and I go, okay, like, for the Greenhithe Bridge, I knew for a start that it was deep enough, the water under that is quite deep, and that I could have jumped off it without a rubber band. It would have hurt a little bit if I hit the water slightly incorrectly, but I've jumped off many things of a similar height into water without a bungee cord, so I wasn't too concerned about that. And I knew if the system failed, then it would be slowing me down anyway, so the impact into the water would be quite light. I might get a few bruises, and I'm not afraid of a few bruises. And so we've done test weights. So whenever we do, with our particular business, whenever we test a new thing out, we don't actually do it ourselves. We put weights on it, and we watch and film the weights and see that it's doing what it's meant to do. And once we're really comfortable with that, then we go, well, look, there's absolutely no logical reason why we can't now become the test dummy.
Yep.
And so that's what I do on any sites or any activities we invent and open. I become the test dummy ultimately, because I simply go, well, look, if I'm prepared to take the risk,
yep,
then I'm able to then offer it to the public if I'm completely convinced that it's safe and predictable and
yep,
and above all fun,
Absolutely. And lots to take out for the boys there. Not just, we're not expecting every boy to follow the path you have around adventure tourism and adrenaline fueled things, but even just things they're working out in their lives, that acronym to, just push pause and think about it. And clearly, you've articulated a lot of the science and as well as the art, the science behind what you've done. But I'm keen to know, is there a moment when you've got to go home to your mum and say, hey, I'm doing something new. I'm jumping off bridges with an elasticated bungee cord around my ankles. How did it go down with friends and family and things when you were onto this new thing in the early days?
Well, it was interesting. I was actually kind of really privileged when I was brought up, in that my mother, who was largely responsible for bringing me up, had a really simple philosophy, and she knew I was naughty anyway, and that, hey, I was going to climb that tree or do something a bit what could be considered a bit crazy.
Yeah.
And what she'd simply say to me is, look, AJ, if you climb that or walk across there or whatever it is, where it was a risk, she'd say, look, if you fall off and you hurt yourself, don't come crying to me. Or worse still, if you kill yourself, I'm going to be really sad. So be careful. And then she just turned her back, because she knew I was going to do it anyway. And I think being honest with your parents is really critical, because they want you guys to grow and be independent and just do whatever you want to do in the best possible way you can do it. And the only way you can do that is to get out there and take some risk and do it. But the smart thing is understand the risk. Just try and figure that part out, and your parents have done exactly the same thing. Whatever they do, they've made mistakes, but they're still there, and So Mum was actually quite kind of happy, really. At least she thought, well, doing something that's keeping me busy and I'm not getting into naughty mischief.
Yep. Yeah. It's Mum's know best on that one. She sounds like she handled it pretty well, and it worked out all right in the end, I think. I just want to move to what sounds, from or seems from what I've been reading about, quite a pivotal moment, that, the Eiffel Tower jump. It brought you a bit of worldwide fame, or it really sort of put bungee jumping on the map, I suppose. How was that from going, from doing things around New Zealand to doing such a dramatic piece of, whether it was promotion or advertising or whatever? Was that a life changer for you, that Eiffel Tower jump? I mean, first of all, I imagine you shouldn't have been jumping off there in the first place. I don't suppose you had too much permission to do it. So how did it all come about?
Well, I was lucky enough to go to France as part of the New Zealand speed skiing team. And so when we arrived in Paris, picked up a car, and as we were driving out of the city, the Eiffel Tower was sitting there in a majesty, looking amazing. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. I'm going to actually have to come back and jump off her. Anyway, and so I ended up visiting Paris a number of times. And so the next time I came back, I actually went in there and had a really good look at it to see, well, if I was going to jump off this, where would I jump from? And so I decided to measure it. And so I scrambled up underneath where I thought I might jump and lowered a little line off to the ground, tied a knot on that. So I had basically a bit of string with a knot on one end and a fishing anchor on the other end, and took that in my bag back to where we were living in the mountains, and used that as a measuring device off a bridge that was higher. But anyway, that did the testing, all of that sort of stuff. But there was one major problem. We knew we'd never get permission, so I had to do it illegally. And so I didn't have any issue doing it illegally, because I was a bit upset with the French from sinking our, the Greenpeace boat, the Rainbow Warrior, in Auckland Harbour the year before. And so I thought, well, we'll give them one back, and it's just a bit of, bit of banter. And anyway, so the challenge there, there was a technical thing to do with the jump, and I was able to resolve that away from the Eiffel Tower. So I did all the testing, 600 kilometres away on this private little hidden away bridge that was a bit bigger. And but the real challenge then became jumping without getting caught. I knew I'd get caught afterwards. And so we were able to suss out all the security systems, take out all the cameras, security guards, with diversion sort of tactics. It was a bit like robbing a bank, and
it does sound like a movie, AJ. Unbelievable.
Yeah, so we slept up there the night, and early in the morning rigged it all up, and I had a film crew lined up, and then jumped. And my French wasn't very good in those days, because I didn't take French when I was at school. I should have, but anyway. And so I miscalculated, and I was a bit higher off the ground than what I was expecting to be, but that was fine. I missed the ground by about 4 meters as opposed to 2 meters. And because I was meant to grab a bottle of champagne from a young lady that was running out to give it to me when I was jumping from the thing. But anyway, no, that really, really launched it, and it got people super interested all over the world, and it was a perfect kind of marketing tool, if you like. And we've used it ever since extensively to give our business a little bit of credibility, if you like. And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating to come from that, and just to look at a building and think, I've got to jump off that one. It's not a thought process most people have, I would imagine. But I suppose we move now from the Eiffel Tower jump to now you becoming sort of AJ Hackett, the entrepreneur, the businessman, expanding into different countries. How did you find that transition from going from something which was a passion and a real, something you love doing into now growing a business, developing a business, and essentially being front and center of taking New Zealand onto the global stage with a product that had never been seen before? How did that, sit on your shoulders?
Well, we basically, I suppose, in a way, we were kind of forced to do that from the very beginning. And that when I first opened the Kawerau Bridge in Queenstown with Henry and a couple of the guys, what became obvious is immediately many people wanted to do it, and media from all over the world sort of flocked in to watch these crazy people paying money to jump off a bridge, and it got the entrepreneurial hearts of a lot of young people going from different countries. So we would have a lot of people approaching us wanting to take our technology and use it in their countries. And so we realized that our biggest problem was going to be accidents and inexperienced, silly cowboy-style operators opening that didn't know what they were doing and seriously hurting or killing people. And so what we then did as a way around that is we quickly put together a code of practice or a standard for bungee jumping, which is the first adventure tourism standard in the world. And that became a joint standard between Australia and New Zealand. And then I quickly moved over to Australia, where we set up in Cairns and then in France, in Normandy. And we saw it starting to go crazy in America. So we made a decision not to actually go into America and wait until the dust settled. And it did. There was all of a sudden, there was something like 350 different bungee operators. And then there was a few deaths within a couple of months. And that just shut the industry down. And then we went in and then had a look at it and picked up some of the pieces.
Yep.
And, when I closed our Las Vegas site 15 years ago, it was the only permanent bungee site in America. So one of our challenges with expanding globally has been protecting the market and the image. And so, the brand became super important. And so I decided, rather than calling the company Elastic Fun or Bungee Jump International or something like that, decided to put my name on it to give it credibility. So it was always, the company's been known as AJ Hackett, AJ Hackett Bungee, and more recently, with the diversification of our products, we've actually rebranded, where we now, all of our group outside of New Zealand trades under the name of Sky Park by AJ Hackett, which just offers a bigger diversity of activities. So we do things like zip lines and giant swings and, adventure parks and bridge walks and tower climbs and all sorts of stuff, beside bungee. And with that comes food and beverage and merchandising and transport and, filming, videos, photos, all that sort of carry on.
Yeah.
And so, so we're actually, it's been interesting. Now we find ourselves in a global pandemic, and congratulations, guys, for being good and supporting New Zealand through, having the discipline and the balls to bloody be good through this time. But we've taken this opportunity to further develop our business, and it's been really interesting. This is how many companies are successful. When times get hard, the smart people make the most of it, and that's kind of what we've been doing. We're actually expanding our companies further, developing new products, making our sites more interesting. And for me, I used to be on an aeroplane every 1 to 2 weeks. I'd be doing about 2 to 250 flights a year. It's ridiculous, and I'd spend maybe 3 weeks a year in New Zealand. The rest, over the last 30 years. And so this has been a big change for my life is actually how do you actually manage this going forward. So it's been really cool, actually. It's taught me a lot. And so something about business is, if you're not learning something every day, then you're at risk, and it's about developing stuff and innovation and, embracing technology where appropriate. And so we're and as Kiwis, I think we have a fundamental advantage, which is we tend to be quite entrepreneurial, and we also tend to be ready to give stuff a go, and that's a huge first step. Like, a lot of people dream about things and or go, oh, I wish I'd thought of that,
Yep.
or oh, I wish I'd done that, as opposed to, well, just do it. There's no harm in trying. And Kiwis are good at that. And, out of Westlake, some pretty amazing people have come out of that school, both at a business level, sporting level, and just good human beings. And, for me, anybody can make lots of money, but it's important how you make the money. And so, you've got to have good values, so apart from having a smart idea and a dream, you got to put that into place with good values. So you don't screw people to benefit yourself. Like, it's really important that you remain good to yourself, and that's another reason, I use that thing I talked about before where, like, accept the responsibility for the good and the bad, right? And there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that happens. And I love problems. I love screw ups, because we know we've got no choice but to fix them. And we always come up with better solutions. And we go, why didn't we think about that earlier? And so, with that sort of attitude, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
I think that's, fundamental, I suppose, to us as a school. You mentioned there about values. I've got it written down to ask you, how do you reconcile, making lots of money with retaining being a good person? But I think you've beat me to it. You've articulated that really, really well. A question I've got, I suppose, is a lot of the boys who are listening here, they're 17, 18, they're about to they'll be leaving school pretty soon and about to make their mark in the world. You've certainly made your mark on the world in your industry. What advice would you give someone for, like I say, taking their first steps out of their comfort zone, out of the safety of a school where everything's, well managed and runs to bells and everything's ticked off and it's very safe? What advice would you give to a young person who's just, all that's going to end, no matter what, it's going to come to an end, about the what next for them?
Okay, guys, excuse me. I think there's, for me, there's a couple of basic rules, and one is never stop learning, right? So, the beauty of school is that it taught us some basics, like how to add and subtract, divide, play around with numbers, how to read, write, a little bit of history, those sort of things. And a lot of it seemed like it was irrelevant. Some of it seemed like it was important, depending on what turned you on. But there's so many things now that you can learn. And so reading is really important, and reading books that are good for your mind, because it's actually it's from the shoulders up that's important. Doesn't matter whether you're a big, strong first 15 rugby player or someone that plays in the school orchestra with the flute or something. Like, we're all equal from the shoulders up. It's what you do with your mind, and so you must keep progressing that and learning. So don't stop learning, and then take risks. You've got to take risks, and and you've got to have confidence in yourself. Just build that up, and And I think the other thing here is like, when I was your age, guys, I thought 60 years old was really old, and I actually didn't even want to get 60. I thought, shit, I just want to live till I'm 30, that'll do, because I think everyone over that age is boring, but as you get older, that kind of changes. And, now I'm 63, I'm still super active. So I look after my body best I can. I watch what I eat. That's really important for me, like personal health, because a good, healthy body also equals a good, healthy mind, and vice versa. And so I expect most of you guys are going to live well into your hundreds. So when I was your age, the average person was dying at just over 70 years old. By the time you get into your later years, your life expectancy will be around 100. So you've got a lot of time right now to make the most of life on the planet, and you've got to live every day to the max. So that means like get out there, have fun, and also do the work. Like look after yourself, look after your health, look after your mind, love your family, create good, long, meaningful relationships with your buddies at school and your neighbors and your family, and just enjoy the life that we've been offered. We're amazingly lucky to be in this country. It's hugely interesting. So yeah, hey, just embrace it, have fun, live it, don't exist. That is what you can never ever do, please. Existing is just getting out of bed because you kind of have to, going to a job that you hate, coming home and sitting in front of the TV, drinking a crate of beers, like just a boring, unfulfilling life is not what anybody needs to do. We're all capable of much, much more. And, and I think that's, a big part of what Westlake is about, is actually trying to develop young guys into young men that actually can do really cool stuff to make a difference to the world. And I really hope you guys do that.
Brilliant, AJ. I think that's probably a fitting place to stop with your thoughts on finding joy and being creative and not just doing the, running the rat race like a lot of people do. So we really thank you for the time that you've given up. And it's inspiring for these boys to hear from you. You're someone who, in your area of expertise, in your niche, you've changed the world. You've put New Zealand on the map in a certain industry, and you've led that from the front. So to know that you sat in the same classrooms as some of these boys and, played on the same sports teams and did all of those things, and to project that forward to what became, I would imagine it's absolutely inspirational for them. So thank you so much. This has been a really fitting end to this series of speakers that we've had. We're so thankful you've given up your time, and we wish you really, really well for whatever is coming next. And whenever you are back, if you're ever back on the North Shore, Westlake is yours. Come and see us, and it would be great to have you talk to the boys again. So thank you so much. And we really, really do wish you well.
And just guys, one little passing thing I must say is I'm very privileged as a father to have 3 kids, and 2 boys and a girl. And last week, my daughter was nominated on the New Zealand Winter Olympic team. She's amazing slope style and big air skier. And, like we can all do it. So, if anyone's out there that's, really good at sport or really loves it, just go for the max, man. It's all possible. Anyway, have a great holiday, and I really enjoyed chatting to you guys. If I can't see you, I'm sorry. It is Corona time. Anyway, enjoy your holiday, and all the best for your futures. Thank you.
Brilliant, AJ. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Take care. Bye now.
Good on you, mate. Bye. Bye.